Let me bow up for you.
All right.
Okay.
Oh shit. Cold
We're
open. Look at
live.
that. We're back, guys. We are live once again with that classic Cutz action. We got a panel of guests here. We're going to be discussing the finer points of the film, like usual, and it should be a good time. I am very happy to be back at doing this. Cody's not joining us today. He's off at a movie shoot. We got one part of the hormonal werewolves down there with Canadian boy Ryan. We were supposed to have Abby with us, but she was unable to join. Hopefully, she'll be up in the live chat at some point. We also have filmmaker Jack Hunter the second down there in the bottom left, or maybe the bottom right for you guys. I don't know how it's oriented. Who cares? We also have Septum Sin. So,
Well, it depends if it's
two
mirrored.
parts of the Schlockaholics as well. We got Abby in the comments. She is here in spirit and sort of physically. Uh, So yeah, tonight we're going to be discussing Waxwork from 1988. We're going to run that trailer real quick, then we'll give you the tail of the tape, all the details of the production, and then we'll jump into our thoughts on the thing. Should be a pretty fun episode, pretty straightforward, little fun house flick. So, we should be able to get in and out in probably about 90 minutes.
It's 11:45. Let's go.
Imagine, if you will, an exhibit in fear.
It looks a little spooky, boys. You think we should do this?
A place that appeals to your deepest and darkest fantasies.
Ooh, scary.
Your fascination with ghosts, monsters, and the many unearthly elements of the supernatural.
Welcome to the Waxwork.
Look,
Now this is killer.
enjoy,
Wow, the glasses from Nutty Zombies from Hell.
lose yourself in it.
Would you like a closer look?
Really?
But whatever you do, don't step over the rope.
Welcome, my dear. We thought you were too tired to join us. All right, I'm hypnotized.
Hey, not so fast.
Relax. Put on a cup of coffee. We'll talk about it. I want out of here, Sarah. I'm serious.
Getting scared?
Do I get a pretty woman in my illusion? No. No, I get a dork.
It isn't real.
Bravo!
What the hell did you kill him for? He'd have been perfect.
Live, my children. Live.
Hit me. We still need two more.
Vestron Pictures welcomes you into a new dimension in terror. Waxwork.
There it is. Waxwork, baby. This came out in 1988, as I mentioned. It was directed by Anthony Hickox in his directorial debut. Stars Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman, Michelle Johnson, David Warner, Dana Ashbrook, and Patrick Macney. It's partially inspired by the 1924 silent film Waxworks, all plural with that shit. It was written by Anthony Hickox as well. It was produced by Stefan Ehrenberg. It's got cinematography by Jerry Lively. It was edited by Christopher Sibeli with music by Roger fucking Bellone. It was distributed by Vestron Pictures. Release date of June 17th, 1988. Had a budget of $3.5 million according to Wikipedia. Only made back 800 grand of that, which is pretty fucking rough. But it's since attained sort of a cult classic status among a lot of people. It's a shame that Waxwork doesn't get a lot more attention. I think, it's kind of one of those cult classic movies that should have, in my opinion, been upgraded to just a legitimate classic with, the ease of access to the internet and everybody able to see it now. You can get a handy double feature with both Waxworks films on it from that Vestron series, the collector's series. I think I paid about $10 for that at Walmart. And it's worth having in the collection for sure. So we're going to jump into sort of, I guess, personal history with the film. We'll start with you, Brandon. Was this your first time watching Waxwork, or is it something you've seen in the past?
Yes. Well, I know of it, but I've never seen it up until last night. I'm glad I did. I mean, it's kind of cool to be able to check it out. I like full moon stuff, and I believe this is full moon if I remember correctly. And
I don't think it was associated with full moon at all. It just definitely has that vibe, though. It's
it
actually in
feels
my
like
notes
full
right there,
moon.
though.
That's the thing; it feels like it to me. But that's but again, I've liked those types, and this one just is in general fairly fun. And it was good to watch as I went through. So, otherwise, yeah, I mean, it was just pretty cool to watch some of these things for the first time. I mean, though, would I have liked it better as a child? I'm not sure. I wasn't as big into horror as a child, so probably not.
Right on, right on. What about you, Ryan? Is that this your first time with Waxwork?
No, I've seen Waxwork on and off for the last few years. Can't remember how I was introduced to it, but just like Sin was saying, it definitely has that full moon vibe. Even the music kind of just has that Albert Band kind of thing going on with it. But yeah, I was looking it up while he was talking. It looks like, yeah, despite feeling completely like full moon, it's has nothing to do with Chucky Band. But yeah, no, I love this movie. I love the sequel. Good times. Just dumb 80s fare.
Yeah, man, after you get through that like swing music murder opening and it gets into the opening credits, it really does kind of slam you with that full moon vibes for sure. That was like the first thing I wrote in my notes.
I don't know, man. Even the swing music opening feels like Chucky Band.
Oh man, I love that for some reason. The music playing while they're just roasting that guy in the fucking fire. It's good times. Stealing his trinkets, his occult artifacts.
Well, you know the movie's going to be good when it opens with big band jazz.
That is true. That is usually a hallmark of an enjoyable picture right there. What about you, Jack? Is this your first time with Waxwork?
The version I watched had Paris Hilton in it. I don't know which one y'all watched.
Oh, you mean House of Wax? Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I originally watched this later in 2020. Zach was on a podcast like when everyone was like streaming and stuff during the pandemic, and I bought the Blu-ray of 1 and 2, and I really enjoyed it. Zach actually introduced Blamed at my movie premiere on video, so that was really cool to know. The guy from Waxwork and fucking Gremlins, like hell yeah. I rewatched it this weekend, and I started the beginning of part 2, and I mean, I know we're not talking about part 2, but going from part 1 to part 2, it's like night and fucking day. Two totally different movies, and for a film that only grossed $800,000 on a $4 million budget, pretty shocking to get a fucking sequel. The math isn't mathing, like what?
Yeah, I mean, it was clearly a passion project, I think, for this dude. I'm sure he had an attachment to it, given that it was his directorial debut. And I'm pretty sure that Hitchcock's directed the second one too, yeah?
Yeah, he did.
So
Not sure.
Yeah, he did the second one and Hellraiser 3 back to back, which is pretty cool. With a vampire movie sandwiched right in between these. And he also did Warlock the Armageddon, which a lot of people don't like, but actually I enjoy that movie quite a bit. I'm a Warlock 3 apologist. I don't think it's that bad. I think there's like that lame fourth one that I don't remember liking, but Waxwork's a movie that I found out about in high school. I used to have this friend named Keegan. He's been mentioned many times on the show because that dude used to hook me up with duped tapes where it would be like a couple of different movies on just a Memorex fucking VHS tape. And this was one of those times. I forget the movie that it was paired with Waxwork on there, but Waxwork was clearly the favorite of the two. So I remember fast forwarding to the point where Waxwork started on that tape many a time. It's just a great flick, man. I think it's a good example of how to perfectly pace one of these sort of funhouse attraction style horror films. doesn't waste a lot of time, gets you right into the oddness and the action and all that stuff. It doesn't try to hold your hand through a bunch of exposition or anything. All you need to know is that these fucking guys are running a waxwork and people are getting sucked into the scenes, and it's all part of a voodoo apocalypse kind of a plot to complete this ritual with 18 souls so that he can raise all these evil entities to just create hell on earth or something like that. And obviously, it
Yeah,
fails
that's never
miserably,
really
but
explained. That's never really
what's that?
explained throughout the film. It's never explained, like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, we need two more for what? Like, and then
Oh,
the sequel
the old
obviously
guy and
doesn't answer it.
the old dude in the wheelchair explains it when he's like, just pretty much lays it out that the dude he had killed, well, we'll get there. So what do you
Yeah,
guys think about our cast of characters here? I mean, we've got really a lot of people in this movie. There's several appearances by several recognizable folks. Like Abby said, it does have a great 80s cast. David Warner being right at the top of the list. He's one of those guys that's like, he always reminds me of like a Nazi that you want to like, like he would be that dude in a movie. I'm pretty sure he's played
every
similar characters to that.
every time I see him, I'm always like Titanic and fuck you, David Warner, like that,
Oh, there
like
you
fuck you
go.
for trying to do that. That's what I put him with is but yeah.
So our main character was what were you gonna say, Brandon?
No, I just agreeing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recognize him from a ton of stuff. I don't know that Titanic or anything specific is the first. So maybe Waxwork might be the thing that comes to mind when I think of David Warner, but he's in a bunch of good stuff. I think that, old Billy from Gremlins is an odd main character in this film because he has like secondary character energy the whole time, but for some reason he's the main focus of the movie. In any other movie, he'd be like that rich prick sort of side character to the main characters. But Waxwork is an odd duck
Absolutely.
all around, So he's our leading man. I think he kills it in this movie. He smokes a bunch of cigarettes, gets to yell at people and stuff. He's basically the polar opposite of Billy from Gremlins in this. His character name is Mark. What do we think of Mark in this film? We'll start with you, Brandon.
So let's see. I can never put names to faces. Is Mark the one of the ones that dies early
Zach.
on?
No, Mark's the
Mark
Gremlins
is
kid.
Zach.
Okay.
Zach.
I mean, to me, it's a typical trope that you got your cool kids, and you got you kind of cool kids that are like the wise guys that stand by, as a friend of mine used to call them, and then you got your one jock character. So, as far as characters go, I think he's fine.
Like I said, just think it's weird that he's the main character. In most other traditional casting scenarios, the type of character that he is in this would be like that rich asshole friend to the nice guy main character. But he's just a rich asshole, and he gets to take the lead in this. I think it's pretty great. What about you, Ryan? Do you have any thoughts about old Billy from Gremlins and this shit?
Sorry, guys. Just give me 30 seconds here. I apologize. The fam just got home. I'm just touching base.
Oh,
with
no
them.
problem. We'll circle back around to you. What about you, Jack? What do you think of old fucking Billy's performance in this?
Zach's character, Mark.
Yeah, he's Mark in this movie.
Yeah, I think it was great. He played the snobby a little too on point, like the total stereotype. And then, I mean, he played it very well, but it was just like too much, I'd say, in the beginning. When they're eating and he's like looking around the flowers at his mother, and he's just like, yeah, I don't know. It was just a little too on point. And then what? Y'all be nice. Just put that shoe there. Okay. And then, damn it, kids. Yeah. I did not like the way they did his character development, because by the end of the movie, he's the exact opposite of how he was when he's first introduced. I did not like that. I think it was his character development was rushed, to say the least. He ends up being a snooty guy that would, he'd rather in the beginning would rather buy the wax museum to going to I don't want it. Like I don't know. It's just I didn't like his character. Yes, he was in that Mouth of Madness. Yes, that was a classic Craven. Oh my god, classic. But yes.
Yeah, that's fair, dude. I mean, the movie, there isn't really much character development in the film, but what is there is kind of rushed because of the fast pacing of the film, I think. They weren't trying to spend a bunch of time watching these characters develop. It's really just about getting them in there, getting them interacting with the wax scenes and having cool stuff happen. It's just about
Yeah.
a bunch of oddness is really what's going on in the movie. That whole opening scene with him and his mom, where he's bitching about wanting his caffeine and she's not letting him have any till he's a big boy or whatever, and how it's like she's reading the newspaper and he's reading a comic book.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so strange,
Yeah.
In my head canon, I like to think that this movie takes place in the same universe as Society or something. It's got some of those vibes going on with it as well. What
Yeah,
about
I
you?
actually get the opening to
What do you
this
think?
and the opening to Society mixed up in my head most of the time.
Right? It's got a very similar vibe. Like I could fully buy that these events with the Waxwork are taking place in like a few blocks over from where all the shit's going down in Society. What do you think of old Zach Galligan in this movie, Ryan? I don't know why I want to keep calling you Brian tonight.
It's okay. It's actually, if you watch our most recent episode, we have a bit of a joke about that.
I'll be
But
getting to that.
I agree with Jack for the most part with what he was saying there. Like Zach Galligan in this, I mean, he's good and there's nothing wrong, I'd say, with his acting per se, but yeah, the character makes no sense. The character basically has an arc solely because the movie needs him to have one, and he needs to be our hero by the end. There's nothing that happens to him or his character to really change this much about him. Like he still could have been, let's face it, he still could have been a prick at the end of the movie and still wanted to kill everything in that museum. Like he didn't need to become such a good guy. Like I liked him being the prick for the first, third of the movie. I'd wish that had continued. And
they
he just
should have
saves
leaned
the day
into
and then goes, saves the day and then goes back to giving his mom shit for not giving him caffeine. That would have been fine.
Right. And at the very end, he could have said something really quirky. They could have done that being like, and Mom, where's my caffeine? And smile to the camera
Gets
and
home
fade to
covered in
black.
blood. Just be like, Mom, I need my caffeine. I'm a big boy now.
Yeah.
You should have just walked in and fucking chugged a whole pot of coffee and just tore up a newspaper. That'd have been awesome. Yeah, it's like, they got so swept up in just creating oddness with this movie, and it does feel like about halfway or 2/3 of the way through the movie, they remember, oh shit, we have to have like a hero in this thing.
Yeah.
And so then he just kind of falls the role, What do we think of Sarah?
I got a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, no, I think is Sarah the original for this character, the girlfriend of Zach, Mark, starting out?
No, she's just a friend. Like he actually dated that China girl who's the crude chick, which we'll get to her. But Sarah's kind of like
right. That's what I got a question about.
Normal girl next door friend that's actually a kinky fucking weird fuck demon, on the inside.
Yes.
Hides it away, She's got her Marquis de Sade obsession that really just kind of hampers her involvement in the finale and causes more problems than they really needed.
And secretly changes into someone else in the sequel, which is magic.
I think that she looks like an old lady somehow, even though she's clearly like a young person. But just the way her face looks, like she already looks like she's probably gonna look when she's like 80, just with less wrinkles. She's an odd looking person, man.
I think it was the haircut. I don't think it was doing her any favors.
Yeah, I'd still hit it though.
Yeah, I noticed Zach Galligan kind of looks a little bit odd too when I was watching this. Maybe because it was in just such crisp high definition and I watched it on the big TV, but his eyes feel too big for his head. I don't know if anyone else
you know what it
has
is?
ever noticed
Actually,
that.
it's the hair with Zach too. His hair's cut so short, he doesn't got them curls that he has in every other movie
That
he's
is
in.
true. Yeah, he didn't have the volume that he had in Gremlins to the hairdo. So it's a bit different.
gonna
He
pop.
should probably, hopefully he, noticed that himself.
It's like when you see Wilford Brimley in The Thing, but he doesn't have a mustache.
That's it. You're done.
Yeah, Wilford Brimley sans mustache is one of the more uncomfortable things I've ever encountered. It's not good. That's probably how he got the diabetes. He fucking didn't have the mustache, and he lost his protection spell or whatever from that thing.
Speaking of him, I recently rewatched Cocoon 1 and 2.
Fuck
Great
yeah.
films.
Cocoon's getting covered on Classic Cutz someday for sure.
Oh,
I think it was one I meant to do over the summer.
So with Sarah,
what do you think of Sarah, Brandon?
So yeah, Sarah as a character is not one I would have expected. Like I said, this movie surprised me by killing off like half the cast at the very beginning. But Sarah was one of those that I didn't quite think was going to be one of the survivors. I thought it was going to be China, to tell you the truth, because she was the type that, you would have had as the survivor in a typical 80s horror film. This one, however, she actually, to tell you the truth, the character didn't make much of an impression, which is the other reason why I was like there, because she was kind of like there. She pined for the main guy who wanted the hot, the hot chick stereotypical thing. So it's just kind of it's interesting to see that character being the one that was one of the final girl, so to speak, even though there was a final guy as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely got to watch that new episode you guys did. I did watch part of the opening at work where Ryan's out in the woods or whatever. And I knew that it was something I needed to save till I got home so I could properly enjoy it. Yeah, I agree with you, Brandon. I think that Sarah is one of the more creative things that this movie does. I can't think of any other horror film where like the mousy girl next door character survives as long as Sarah does in this movie, and turns out to be like a BDSM freak that's obsessed with the Marquise de Sade. I mean, it's such an odd part of this movie. It's another one of those things that really reminds me of society in a lot of ways. Like she would fit right in with those fucking shunting motherfuckers over there. And she's honestly sort of villainous in this. I don't think that she's a good person. Yeah. I don't think she wanted to be rescued either. I think old Billy kind of
she was under the spell. She was the spell.
She was under something.
Yeah, but she was getting all tingly in the fucking attic just finding the Marquise de Sade book. Like she clearly had nothing to do with the waxwork going on in this,
That was the reason so hard for her to break the spell, is that she was so obsessed with it. There's something that isn't quite right about somebody who is that obsessed with Marquis de Sade. She might be the kind of
she was.
She'd probably watch Sallow and be like, Sallow is a good, wholesome film. I like it.
Yeah, she was going to end up in a sketchy dungeon somewhere, regardless of the events of this film. What about you, Ryan?
She must have. Throw that. That's gross.
Basically, just what you guys have already covered. She's kind of. I keep forgetting she's in the movie until the whole Marquis de Sade thing starts, and then with my most recent rewatch, I thought she got blown away by the shotgun. But that was the other kinky girl, the one that was already in the Marquis de Sade thing.
Right.
Then she showed up again, and I'm like, oh
yeah, she's still alive.
Blew my mind. So yeah, that's about as
outside of
that character.
Yeah, I agree, dude. Outside of just the general kinkiness of that whole scenario, she doesn't really add anything to the movie. She's just, the whole thing is kind of like, oh shit, we got Michael McNally in the house. What's up, buddy? The whole thing is like she's just the reveal of her being a bigger slut than the girl we thought was a massive slut in the movie. Waxwork is also an odd duck in that there's no nudity in this movie. that I noticed. Usually I notice that kind of thing. And it feels relatively family friendly until you get to the Sarah sequence with the Marquis de Sade, and they start using a bunch of language that it made it real uncomfortable when I was watching it in the family room here. Because like I said, the rest of the movie, it's got some gore in it and whatnot, but it's relatively tame. Oh, settle down, bro. Hold on. Anyways,
More violent than bloody.
I guess let's talk about China. Our typical bad girl character. You get a lot of characters like these in horror films where they're kind of vaguely slutty and foul-mouthed a little bit and hotter than they have any business being. She kind of looks like Winona Ryder if she was like an 80s bimbo. Um, what are our thoughts on China? Real weird name too. It doesn't seem like the type of name you typically hear about, like with a bunch of rich white kids. Brandon, what are your thoughts on China?
Well, China, I don't quite get why she hangs out with the group that she is, because she's clearly, playing the popular girl. She's definitely got that 80s hotness down. And at the same time, I do think that, again, she's one that I thought was going to be our final girl, or at least last longer than she did. Like I said, the movie does fight a couple of the tropes that I thought were interesting in these types of films. Because in most films, they would have dragged it out a little bit longer, kept those two friends alive, and killed them off more slowly.
Yeah, Waxwork doesn't fuck around. I mean, it gets you right into the weirdness, and you lose, like you said, half the cast immediately in pretty spectacular fashion, which we'll get to. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This movie, that's why I think it's kind of underrated, man. It does a lot of things that other horror movies don't do, and it does it in a weird way, and it's got just a fun vibe to it. It doesn't have a super satisfying story with a bunch of character and plot development. No, it's just, a funhouse attraction type flick where you're just in there watching cool shit happen. But I just think it's so odd that it hasn't gotten like more increased fandom in modern times. It's strange how that happens sometimes, Ryan, what do you think about China?
So yeah, again, thought she lasted longer. Every time I watch this and she gets sucked into the vampire thing, I'm always trying to remember. I'm like, okay, how does she get out of this? Because this is way too early for her to die. And I'm like, I can't remember how she got. And then of course I'm like, oh well, she fucking doesn't. And that is, and I know like this is basically just a monster fest. This is an effects reel of a movie, but by killing off these two characters at the beginning, China and I don't know, Bumble the Boy Wonder there, you lose half of the cast that you've invested the first 15 minutes of this movie with. And the movie, to keep a body count going, the movie has to introduce new characters after this half-hour mark, and we're left with like the detective, the older guy.
Yeah.
This butler turns out he's got a bunch of friends.
Several random kids that just show up just to be pushed into Waxwork scenes,
They kill off random people just to kill them off so they can say, oh, Butler, you shouldn't have killed these people off. We needed those too,
Exactly. And so kill off the nobodies first. Like just make it so that the asshole football player snuck in and get him off there. Like don't kill off half our cast just to now force us to, because China was way more interesting than football jock douchebag.
I agree.
I'm gonna put
the best acting we got out of that guy was when he pounded the wall in the fucking phone booth. That was his contribution to the movie. I don't even think we get to see him die. Like some of those scenes later, they really are just filling body count. Like the dude pushes the kid into the scene, and then you just see him as part of the scene. You don't even get to see the sequence because we don't even know who the fucking guy is. Why would why would we want to watch him die? Like I think that's part of what makes Waxwork unpredictable, but I think it's also a symptom of probably how the movie was made. It was this guy's first movie, so I get the idea that they were just filming cool shit and keeping the stuff that they liked. And then at some point they realized, like, oh fuck, we killed half the main characters already. I mean, I suppose they could have moved things around and shot extra stuff, but again, directorial debut. Clearly, this is made by somebody that just really likes horror movies and got somehow like almost $4 million to make one. So he just did the best that he could. And I think that gives it a sort of scrappy, almost a low budget vibe to it, even though it is a pretty big budget movie by random 80s horror standards. Um, who else? Did we get anything from you on China, Jack?
I had a very confusing question because apparently she's not who she says she is, and she's been a vampire for 106 years at one point towards the end. Like, Mark tries to save her. It never made sense. Like, it just, I don't know if that was an accident flub of a line, but I'm like, wait a minute. So was she in on this whole thing to bring him to the wax? Like, fuck.
I think it was
I
on the persona of the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to imply that once they're made part of the scene, they're part of that story.
Yeah,
like they cease to be themselves, kind of a thing. So I guess all that's. Go ahead, Brennan. Sorry.
I just wanted to say, just as devil's advocate on there, though I do agree with the take that I think that they should have had those characters last longer. I will say that killing them off in the beginning like that definitely set it apart from others in that genre. So, that's one thing about the horror genre that can be an issue, is that it's extremely predictable in its nature. And doing that, I just, sometimes I like something like that just throws you off your equilibrium. Because once those two are killed off, then you got to wonder, well, what about the other two? Are they going to kill them off? It's like the movie Feast, where you have the guy jump in and to save the day, and it's not really a spoiler because they kill him. They do it in the advertising, but you think he's going to save the day, and they just kill him off right away. So just
rip his head off. Yeah.
So it's I like it when they do fight the regular expectations, but at the same time, I would have liked to have known ahead of time that, why am I investing myself in these?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Anthony Hickox did that on purpose to subvert expectations. I think it's just, like I said, a symptom of new filmmaker, just figuring it out, and things happened in a weird sequence, and he just went with it, because you'd be forgiven for being like, what the fuck? They left like the boring girl alive, but then it turns out she's a freak for real. So it's just, maybe it was intentional. I don't know. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a genius. So I guess all that's left to talk about cast wise, of course, we got David Warner in there, but he's really just sort of like a prop. Whoops, I didn't mean to click that again. He's just sort of like a prop in the movie almost. He shows up like 3 times, says some cool shit, and then he's part of the finale. I get the idea he probably had better stuff to be doing, or I don't know what was going on. You'd think he would be in the movie a lot more, but he shows up at the beginning and then almost doesn't even show up again until like halfway through the movie.
That's where half the budget went. It went to him.
Probably. It really feels like they shot all of his stuff in like a day or something as well. So, I mean, of course, we could talk about how awesome he is in general and how just even having him in the movie for that little bit helps to make the entire thing. But that's sort of stuff that goes without saying. I do find Tony interesting, though. That guy, I feel like, plays the sort of goofball friend in a lot of movies. I feel like I've seen him in several things where he's basically that same character from this movie. I really like his whole Waxwork sequence where he ends up in the werewolf scene, which I guess, he's also a good way to segue into talking about the key scenes of the film. It's like he ends up in a really fucked up episode of Sliders with John Rhys Davies in there. And
oh my God, I was just about to say that. Like that, it was like an alternate universe of Sliders. Like that was that was perfect.
He's even kind of wearing the same outfit because doesn't like whatever his name Arturo or whatever in Sliders
Dr.
just like that.
Yes, Dr. Arturo. Yes, he does. He it's almost identical.
He is in Twin Peaks. You're right. Yeah, that's I gotta figure out a way for us to cover Twin Peaks one of these days. I love that fucking show.
I gotta watch it all the way through. I keep watching it 2/3 of the way and then stopping.
What do you guys think of the werewolf sequence, and I guess Tony in general? We'll start with you again, Brandon.
Okay, it's a weird mixed bag for me. First off, Tony, if I thought that the other girl was kind of disappeared into the background, he was in the background right away. I had a hard time even realizing he existed until he was in the werewolf thing. But when the werewolf itself was why I thought this must be a full moon feature. I thought because the werewolf had this odd design to him, but it actually had a really cool design with the mid transformation, like of the other guy, of the other kid. That was a pretty cool effect. The werewolf costume though was interesting.
It simultaneously sucks and looks cool. You know, like the face of it, I like, especially the close-up shot where it gets really close to the old hunter guy. You know, if they had just shot it a little differently so that we didn't have to see its crappy body. It's like got Shaggy DA vibes or something going on, and it just doesn't do it for me. But I do like the transformation bits. I think they should have leaned harder into that, but I don't know, man. You could be forgiven for not doing an overly elaborate werewolf transformation at this point in the 80s because so many things had already done it. So you're just going to be endlessly compared to those things if you did it at this time, you know?
It was great, but it wasn't as good as American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, or The Howling or whatever, you know? And it's like, there was so much other weirdness they wanted to show us in this movie, so they just kind of truncate the transformations a little bit. But it's made pretty cool by Tony being like, as soon as it takes hold, he's like, oh man, this has gotta hurt. You know, like he just knows that it's gonna be fucking terrible. And thankfully he's put out of his misery pretty quick. I don't know, any other thoughts? Ryan, what do you got on the werewolf sequence?
I had a question for y'all first though. At the end of that, I don't know why I thought this, but maybe I'm the only one. But I swear the other one didn't get shot, and that the other one was just sitting at the table, like just chilling afterwards. But that's what it looked like to me. So I don't know if that was anybody else. I know he got shot, obviously, which is why he's there. Because there's no reason why he'd be like, yeah, well, werewolf hunter, I'm just going to sit and chill right now. I think I'm good. But I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. I noticed it. I thought about it as well, and it's actually in my notes here somewhere, but I think that's some other new filmmaker shit. Like, they didn't really think about it, and so they're like, oh, we've got to make it obvious that this is a werewolf scene for the context of the wax museum, so we can't have the werewolf just lying in a hairy lump on the floor. So I guess we'll just have it sitting at the table, you know? It's an odd choice. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just, I think, you know, one of those things. New filmmaker, right? So yeah, Ryan, you got anything else on the werewolf sequence?
No, just mirroring basically again. The effects are good. The effects are fine. Get some of that classic 80s bladder effects going on with the face. Always a big fan of that. I do wish that Tony again was in the movie more, especially with the fact that he was the comic relief. That freaking line he drops where he's like, okay, did you guys put acid in my beer again? And then he actually has to remind himself. He's like, wait a minute, I quit drinking.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And it also implies that these guys have been fucking odd ducks to each other for a lot longer than the movie.
But yeah, I mean, it's like... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, who doses their friend with acid? You know,
like bit of a nasty surprise.
Yeah,
but I mean, it does a good job of setting up what we're in store for. It almost feels like an anthology film.
Yeah,
with these scenarios, and I feel the werewolf is a good segue into that. It's not too long. Gets the point across. Jumps in. We're going to see some crazy shit. Cut back to the Waxwork.
It really does feel like it might as well be an anthology film, but done very differently. Wherein instead of like cutting to the wraparound in between the segments, you're simultaneously existing in each segment and the wraparound all at once. You know, and then you got, David Warner kind of as like your host of the anthology almost, who just pops in every now and again to say cool stuff and just be cool and wear Willy Wonka outfits.
I love David Warner, but I like him anyway.
See, and he's also one of those guys, like, I'm pretty sure he is British, but he's British in that way where you're not sure if he's British sometimes, or if he's just from one of those East Coast states where they're kind of British. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yes. Very, very true.
If you're a certain caliber of white person from the East Coast, you're closer to the British roots somehow because of your aristocracy or whatever.
Yes.
So you can't tell. It's kind of like how lots of people think Vincent Price is foreign or whatever, but he's just not. He's just like a high-end white dude from back in the day, So Jack, what do you got on the werewolf sequence?
I think that my favorite part was John Rhys Davies in it. That was the coolest thing about it. I mean, there's really not much to say about it. You guys already said everything. I like werewolf movies, so it was cool. Nothing too like oh my god, it was this, it was that. It was a great film, a great segment that really doesn't mix in well, but yeah, like you said, anthology. It's definitely an anthology movie for sure.
I think there could have been some value in, if they were going to kill these guys so quickly, there could have been some value in having the werewolf scene follow the vampire scene. But the vampire scene has a lot more going on in it, so I guess it does make some sense to also put that after. But yeah, I figured he was legit British, not Connecticut British or whatever.
No, Rory, no.
Oh,
sorry, my kid.
Right. No problem.
Rory.
I will say, I think it's cool. Like, I can't tell, and I didn't have the time to watch all the supplemental material and listen to commentaries or anything. But I like to think that they shot the werewolf sequence on a soundstage, or they, at the very least, found a section of woods with a small cabin that looked like a soundstage. And I think that lends to the wax museum element of it, right? Like, it doesn't feel like you're actually in the woods. It feels like you're on a stage that's meant to look like the woods in the whole sequence. But again, I don't know for sure that it was done on a soundstage or whatever. It could have been actually shot in nature, but I don't think so. And I think that that's a smart choice, if they actually did just shoot it in the woods somewhere that just looked like a normal piece of the woods, it would take a little bit away from that sort of waxwork vibe of the whole thing, right? Like, every other sequence in the movie feels very much like you're also on a set, like a stage, like you're in the little diorama. And I think that,
so no one really turned into a werewolf.
It's sick. What's that?
What? I said, so no one turned into a werewolf? I've been lied to? Oh, some bullshit. Fake news. This is all fake news.
And I do like the idea of these guys showing up to hunt a werewolf and only bringing 3 bullets. I feel like that's...
They didn't even preload the gun.
Yeah, it's like you drop
it. Why the fuck would you bring them in a little ceremonial box for the pageantry, Like, just fucking put them in there before you show up.
You know what would have made this even better for me, though, is if Dom DeLuise had played the original werewolf, and then just that would have made me laugh more, because the guy actually almost was comical in his performance anyway because of how over the top it was. So just to me, that would just add to it, and it would make it even better. I don't know. Sometimes when they're over the top, I just say, screw it, go way over the top, just don't throw it to the wind.
Go big or go home.
how they pull the old switcheroo on you too. Like they start to show John Rice Davies transforming, but then you don't get to see it completed, and then you think like, oh, what the fuck? Like you have a werewolf scene and we don't even get any cool 80s bladder effects, and then they end up bringing it full circle with Tony at the end and actually delivering the goods with it. So that's pretty cool. Again, you got to speculate, was that intentional to sort of make you think about it for a second, or was it just them realizing like, oh, we should probably show a little bit more of some sort of transformation, even if we're not going to go all the way with it. But yeah, that's kind of it for the main characters, really. I guess we could just start a fire through key scenes of the film, because there's the movie moves real quick, as I've stated several times. It really is kind of a master class in like pacing a perfect 80s rental horror flick. This movie works great if you're gonna just have like a movie night with friends and drink beer and kind of talk on the side while you just look at cool fucking horror stuff going on. I do, though, one thing that I really do like is that whole Scooby-Doo opening to the Waxwork when they're coming in there, and they all kind of run up behind fucking Mark. It's just got a very Scooby-Doo vibe to the whole thing, which is just sort of odd to put in there, but that's the name of the game when it comes to this movie. I like the whole disappearing act that David Warner pulls when he first invites them to come to the Waxwork. Like he just shows up and then he pulls the Batman at the end and is just gone when they turn around. I think that's pretty cool. Which they never really explain the full nature of how he's paranormal in some way. Obviously he's like not aging, but that's it. We don't ever really see that he explicitly has powers of any kind other than when he does pull that disappearing act. But I mean, his yard wasn't that big either. Maybe he just walked back in the house in the time it took them to turn around. I don't know. We got those random slow-mo shots during the football sequence, which I found odd as well, that they spent. I mean, there's like 3 slow-mo sequences that they show during that scene when they're watching the football practice or whatever. And I can't figure out why. Was it just that, they realized they could shoot really nice looking slow-mo footage? Because it did look nice, but they don't use it anywhere else in the movie, really.
Have you ever noticed like how in a lot of these movies, when they do this, they've got the college kids and all of that, that they create it like none of them have ever really been to college, and that they look at college just some sort of projection of high school. Because that's what it felt more like, was just high school with a few less rules than an actual college. They even had the lockers and like that. And I'm like, this is because I've been to several colleges in my time, and then they're definitely different than this. I've never seen one quite like this.
Because the only thing that really makes you fairly certain that they're in college other than their age is the scenes in the classroom, because it's more like one of those college style lecture halls. What my theory is that they probably had access to that lecture hall to holy shit, that's what I get for doing it in the family room. Sorry if you guys can hear a bunch of dogs barking and kids running. It happens.
No, it's
I think they had access to a lecture hall to shoot the classroom scenes, and then they had access to a high school to shoot the other exterior stuff. So that's quite literally, I think, what's going on. Is in the classroom, they were at an actual college. Outside the classroom, they were shooting at a high school. Because what college has lockers?
Mine did.
Did it really?
Yeah. Actually, I was going to say my college looked very much like that one. I didn't realize they were. I thought from the get-go they were in college, but then when the teacher gave a shit that Zach Galligan was late, that made me think, oh, maybe they are in high school.
Now that I have,
because number one, what college professor gives 2 fucks if you're late for their class? They've already gotten their money. And 2,
right?
Why was he a Nazi sympathizer?
Dude, that was
I
weird.
think he was a Nazi, dude.
He even did
That's why
like
they
the
had
whole
him
hand
teaching.
raise thing.
And I love that
Yeah,
too,
that's
by the
why-
way. He's got the flag and everything going, and it's him throwing his hand up in the air. That's where he's like, "Oh, I better hold myself back a bit.
Oh,
Otherwise, they're gonna
Yeah, I
figure
think
me
he
out."
was so good at teaching the subject because he was there, bro. Yeah.
I had a
We got
college
to remember in the
professor-
80s, World War II was only like 40 years before this, you know? So that guy realistically was probably like in his 20s or something when it happened, you
I
know?
was gonna say if he was 17 or 18, that'd be about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a college professor that would take 10%, 10 points off of your grade
What's up,
average
Cody?
if you were more than 10 minutes late to his class each time, which was not very, but he also had a no excuse policy. Literally, if you had a fever or a disease, you would still have to go to school, which I would think would be very interesting in 2020. I wonder if his policy included that, which would probably get him fired if he did. Hey, Cody.
Probably.
Missed you, guy.
What else we got here? I like that super sick sign. I'm not sure whose house they're in when they're waiting to go to the waxwork either. It doesn't feel like Mark's house. It feels like they're just at some random place so they could have a couch to sit on and shoot that scene. But there's a sign on the wall, and it's just a neon sign that just says beer. And I want one so bad, dude. Like, not a
Go on,
branded
Team U.
sign,
I was just gonna say
neon
Timu.
sign that says beer.
Yeah, go Team U.
What else we got here? Let me flip through my notes. I do like how we've got the tall butler and the little dwarven doorman, and their whole dynamic together is pretty sick. Like the tiny guy's in charge, and he kind of smacks around the big dude. We are sort of implied at one point that they are David Warner's son, or at least the tall guy is. With David Warner's unaging appearance, he could also be the father of the little dwarven fella as well. And, it's never really explained why he would be having these sort of abnormal children. But who cares? It's weird. It's odd. I like him. And the little dwarf guy has an adorable voice. If I had the type of funds, that little dwarf fellow is one of those guys I would hire just to go around with me on adventures and say things, with his sweet accent. I'm not sure where that accent's from. I don't know anything about the guy that played him. And it didn't feel like he was doing a character. I feel like that was his actual
straight
accent.
himself.
Yeah, Abby might be onto something. Maybe that he somehow created them with his voodoo magic or his waxwork abilities and brought them to life or whatever. Which is something of note that we should point out as well. When they initially come into the wax museum or the waxwork, it's not really a museum. They end up seeing, holy fuck, was he really Alf? That's amazing. Hell yeah.
That makes
I did not
sense.
know
That makes
that.
total sense. He looked like him too.
This is me just
Now that
learning
she
that
says
Alf
it,
wasn't
there's
just a puppet.
well,
Yeah.
dude, there's certain sequences where they show full body shots of Alf, most notably in the intro. They show him like running away from the camera at one point. And now that she points it out, I feel like they have a very similar gait because it was the same dude. He also snaps one of the most aggressive bows I've ever seen at that point where he's welcoming them into the waxwork. It's amazing. I like how his adorable little hair flips back when he stands back up. It's great.
I mean, what is he like? Two, not even 2 inches from the floor when he bows. Like, oh, bro, watch yourself.
Dude, I would legit hire that guy to go on adventures with me, and I'd just take him around when I go fishing, like backpack style, like Luke does with Yoda and fucking Empire Strikes Back. I think that would be great fun. What else do we got here? Oh yeah, but my point was, like, when they initially come into the waxwork, it's very clear that the waxwork scenes are real people in like costumes standing there. Because you can kind of see them move like very slightly as it's showing each one.
I think if it was done as it would have been seen in those days, if you think about it on a fuzzy VHS, you probably wouldn't have
Probably
noticed.
Wouldn't notice, and if it was done now, they probably would have like freeze framed the shots and then just digitally panned over them like in editing instead of doing it for real.
Rotoscope, and which is very simple now. Not when it
Well, I
first came
feel
out,
like
but yeah.
too, it also, even with noticing it, it doesn't hurt the movie because the whole idea of the movie is that these waxwork
Yeah.
scenes come alive, you know. So it's not a gripe; it's just something I noticed, really.
Uh,
My
it, wa- I
favorite
mean,
waxwork scene. Good.
well, it wasn't as bad as the Zach Morris time in real life and breaking the fourth wall, moving, but it was good. If you did,
Right.
yeah,
My
yeah.
biggest gripe with the waxwork itself isn't that you can clearly tell they're real people. It's that we have way more interesting creatures that these guys could have gotten pulled into than vampires and werewolves. Like, did you guys see
Well, it's
that
probably
demon baby eating the nanny?
Yeah, or
Like,
that fucking weird
yeah,
alien thing.
yeah.
yeah, or the snake woman in the carriage. Like, pull them into those worlds. I want to see what's going on there.
Well, there's
They
probably an
either make
IP issue at the time
Well,
because
no,
they had
all
the
of it's sort of
aliens and then
copyright friendly, you know. Like they don't go right
yeah,
out and say that it's Night of the Living Dead that they're aping at the one point. They call it like
yeah.
I forget what he says, but um, all of it would have been fine, I think, as in terms of like any sort of IP infringement. And they even make a point when they're in the like going into the waxwork to do like a slow panning shot of that freak show scene with the snake person in the carriage or whatever. And so it's kind of implying that we're going to see something with that at some point. And then all we get is like a brief sequence with it during the insane fucking finale of the movie. Um, so yeah, there's a lot that they left out. Do you guys have any favorite scenes though? Like just in terms of if you visited this waxwork, are there any of them that you particularly enjoyed? Like just as a scene in the
50
waxwork. My
Shades of
favorite
Grey.
is the one where there's like the fucking invisible man looking dude that's forcing the lady to drink gasoline.
Oh yeah,
I would have loved to have seen
that
that.
either, and it's so odd, you know.
I would have visited that wax museum. I mean, you got this little looking house, but then you got this massive room inside that's almost impossible to have existed in that house. And it is cool looking though. I really like it. I mean, I would actually pay to go to that wax museum in real life. Not the well. Okay, let me preface that. I would pay to go to a wax museum like that in real life, not that particular one.
Yeah, this one we would have got into for free because I don't recall him charging a cover charge or anything. It was invite only kind of a thing. Or just if you were walking by, he'd shove you into a wax scene.
Life.
Yeah, I would definitely visit this if it was a real attraction, though, as well. I think, if these were real wax scenes, they'd have been pretty cool. At our wax museum on the Oregon coast, there's actually several horror scenes, and there's actually a swamp scene where when you walk through it, like Jason Voorhees is in there and shit, which is pretty cool. Abby says she's been to Madame Tussauds, and that fucking is a bucket list thing of mine as well. There's something fun about a solid wax museum. I think this movie brings up an interesting point, though, in that they never refer to it as a wax museum in it. They call it a wax works, which is like an old-timey sort of term for this
Rory.
stuff. And that's because I think traditionally they're separated, kind of like you got your wax museum where it's like celebrities and historical figures recreated in wax or historical scenes, and then typically you've got your other wax works, which are wax work fucking amusements that have a bunch of random scenes like this, like horrific stuff and weird stuff and stuff like that. Our wax museum out on the coast is attached to Ripley's Believe It or Not, which is why I think they include a lot of like historical stuff, but then a lot of oddities as well. But I think a lot of the times it's kind of separated into the two categories. You know what I mean?
And it works well because a lot of these museums, like I've been to Madame Tussauds both in Las Vegas, New York, and I went to a wax museum in Myrtle Beach. And I admit, a lot of the fun in those is that you can actually integrate yourself into the little dioramas that they create. So it works very well if you look at this movie and lends itself to it.
yeah. Like there's a Madame Tussauds in Niagara Falls, and they have like the craziest xenomorph exhibit, and you're allowed to go right up, and like there's a picture of my wife. She's got her arm in the xenomorph's mouth, and she's screaming and everything.
I mean,
yeah, it's the same way at the Ripley's one. I meant to upload it, but I forgot. I kind of got strapped with time because of the delay that I had today. But there's a pretty sweet picture of me at the Ripley's Wax Museum, and there's like a shark bite victim, and I'm like standing with my arm around him, like touching one of his nipples. It's a good photo.
It's important.
Hey man,
like
you're gonna have them out like that.
When I did some work at the Helen Keller Institute over in Long Island, they took people to Madame Tussauds because it's one of the few museums where you can touch the exhibits. And if you're blind, it's a way of being able to.
It's kind of a requirement,
and see the people and the characters.
Probably a huge fucking bummer visiting any type of museum as a blind person if you can't touch the stuff, Hell yeah! See, Abby knows how it's done.
Yeah.
I bet you we would have a lot of fun at a wax attraction together.
She didn't specify that was from a wax museum.
That's true. That's true.
Just saying.
And George Bush seems like he might be game for something like that in real life too. I don't know. He's a funny little Texan. Another guy I wouldn't mind backpacking around like Yoda. He's adorable. Let's be honest. I mean, war crimes or whatever aside, he's just adorable. I want to tickle his little belly, dude. I totally lost my train of thought there. But did you guys ever do the wax museum in school?
No.
Or like they would have the kids put on a wax museum? I did a couple of times, but actually both times, that we did it, I was Orville Wright, one of the Wright brothers. And I was paired with some other kid that dressed in like old timey clothes, and we had like a diorama of an airplane with us or whatever, Good times. I never really committed to the wax role though. I would just kind of hang around the booth. Other kids got like serious about it though and wouldn't move the whole time, So yeah, okay, moving on from there, we've got the vampire scene. We didn't really talk about that much. I do enjoy the finale of it. I think the initial part of it is grating and like boring as sin. They're just eating the meat at that table, and for some reason the guy's like clapping really loud and like smacking the table really loud. And then nothing really of note happens. It's just people in bad wigs. No, I'm not edgy. It's just became a habit, bro. I don't know. Also, my camera's bad, like real bad most of the time because I don't spring for quality equipment. So black and white makes it look like an old movie. Yeah, it fits the theme. So basically, I think the vampire sequence is pretty ass other than the white room finale. And I think that was a genius touch, doing the whole thing in a white room, and it's all clean and like clinical looking. And then by the end, it's just fucking trashed. I don't know. You guys got any thoughts on the vampire sequence in general? We'll start with you, Brandon.
I mean, I like that. I do think it's funny where she says, so it's like meat tartare. Like, no, that's nothing like tartare. I have seen tartare. But it does actually, it's a great, what do they call it? It definitely gives you a heads up as to kind of the hypnotic quality that these scenes have, for her actually getting in and eating that stuff when that character would never have eaten that stuff in reality. Very unlike.
She was real thirsty though, so she was down to eat any kind of meat if it came to the right dude. She was really wanting a sophisticated fella, and also got one.
It's very different from the werewolf one where that guy is totally out of it and disoriented. She seemed to be fitting into it a lot more than he did.
Yeah, she fell right into it. That's a real sort of odd element in this movie too, is how like both of the characters that we see initially go in don't really react to being sucked into these wax scenes as if it's anything unusual, you know? like Tony just immediately thinks he was dosed with something, or it's like hypnotism, and China just thinks that she got sucked. She's in a dream. So you fell asleep in the wax museum? Like, how does that make sense? But whatever. Um, yeah, though it adds to that surreal quality of the whole thing. The fact that they don't spend 5 minutes each time they're sucked in there, just being like, "What? What is this? What's happening?" You know, they just go with it. I think
Yeah, movie's got a movie. Cool. Yeah, but you're right about that finale too, taking place in the White Room. Like, that's just the movie. If it wasn't for that insane ending we got, the movie almost would have peaked there for me.
Yeah,
like when that one vampire is thrown against the wine rack.
I love
ridiculous.
Or when he like stakes those two, and that glorious splatter is just coating the walls and all their white dresses and everything. It's great.
No, because the movie kind of after the vampire scene, the movie kind of hits the brakes, I find, and until we get to the finale, it's unless whipping is your thing, it's pretty tame.
Yeah, I feel like that they ran into a pacing issue there, because they're like, holy shit, we've done like 2/3 of the movie already. We have to have some sort of exposition here and explain some kind of a plot. So their friends just leave them at the wax museum, assuming that they went home. And then they pretty quickly realize, like, no, they're legit missing. And, we got to try to find them.
And then the whole part of, like, I think it was kind of cheesy, though. Like, I'm not afraid of you, so you can't hurt me. Oh, come
we'll
on.
get there,
Like,
bro.
we're not
Freddy
there.
Krueger's their ass at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
If that guy
and just defeats them by not believing in the stuff.
So, I mean, if that guy had totally gone with the whole "this is just an acid flashback" thing, he would have just gotten out of the werewolf thing without me, without any scathing whatsoever.
Well, I mean, you don't have to leave her there if she gets killed by a piece of flying rebar or whatever it is. Isn't that how she dies in the movie? She gets like impaled by a rod.
I think it's just a piece of. I can't. I watched Black Museum when it came out in theaters. That was the only time I'd ever seen it. I've never.
I saw it on DVD.
Talk about
I think I own it.
Art imitating life, right there. Like Paris Hilton impaled by a fucking random rod. What's that, Jack?
Well, I haven't seen it since it was on DVD, but I tell you what, I would really like Paris Hilton to lose her lighter in my truck.
Well, yeah, for
y'all remember,
that was, we were talking a lot about House of Wax when we were watching with my wife, and but we were both looking at it, and I was thinking to myself, up until House of Wax, I would watch anything that Dark Castle was putting out, just because I mean, House on Haunted Hill, 13 Ghosts, Ghost Ship, all three of them excellent revisits to classic horror. So, House of Wax was the first one I thought was like a kind of a stumble, but this one, however, very different animal. This one's far more mystical than that one. That one was more of, that is a crazy killer doing his thing. Much like actually a real case where there was a guy who encased people that he killed in dolls in Russia, I believe it was.
Oh, I've heard of that, dude. I can't recall any names associated with it, but I know what you're talking about. That's wild. I liked that House on Haunted Hill remake. I thought that was pretty good, and I saw that one in the theater. What else here? So I guess kind of like you said, after that, we got a bunch of randoms getting sucked into wax scenes, and they're kind of figuring out the stuff to do with the voodoo ritual or whatever, getting the backstory from the old man in the wheelchair who's like, there's so much unsaid in this movie. Like, that guy's clearly part of this society of other random rich white dudes, I guess, that like hunt evil, That's where the butler comes into play at the end, old Jenkins or whatever his name is, or Jensen, whatever he's fucking called. Like, he's part of this society of, you're kind of, the way the dude's dressed with his khaki vest, you get the idea he's some sort of explorer, you know? So it's got kind of that old-timey explorer society vibe to the old guy telling them the story, and then when he comes into play later with like a whole badass pitchfork crowd of people that show up to help fight the wax attractions during the finale. And then they have their little Goonies scene in the attic where they find the article about how this dude, I guess, killed Mark's grandpa because he was like a collector of occult artifacts. So that brings it full circle with the swing music murder scene at the beginning of the movie, which I thought was pretty cool. What are you guys' thoughts on, I guess, the whole middle episode or middle portion of the shit? If you have any other thoughts on it, Brandon?
I mean, it's great to have the exposition. I mean, the detective thing was a bit weird, but he was over the top, angry police officer. I swear that's who they modeled one of the police officers after in South Park. Like not like the main one, not Bar Brady, but like the police chief guy that they had. But
right.
I do like how they have.
He actually looks just like that guy.
Yeah.
Same outfit and everything.
They did. I like that they did give you the thing in multiple ways. Like, they let you know that, yes, they need to kill them in the way that they need to put them all in the dioramas and complete all the dioramas to do it when the butler killed that guy, the tall guy killed him. I also like the fact that you have the really tall guy and the really short guy working side by side. That's a nice juxtaposition. But
yeah.
I do like that they've spread out the exposition. They gave you a dump, yes, but they did try to back it up with a couple other scenes here and there to kind of drive it home a little bit. But it can be missed. Right. As was discussed earlier, that can be missed. And I'll admit, I missed the very beginning because I was distracted. But I now that I'm thinking back to it, yeah, it all comes together pretty well.
Yeah, as much of a sort of random mess as the movie feels like at points, they do keep it together by the thinnest of threads, you know? And there is sort of a clever, like, not explaining too much, leaving certain things unsaid. Like when the cop recognizes all these people from these previous missing persons cases, or the fact that the old man explains that they actually need 18 victims because 666 or whatever. So there was 12 people that were done in by this waxwork before the movie even starts, you know, which broadens the scope of it a little bit in a very subtle but clever way to make the events of the movie feel bigger than they are, you know. And I'm a fan of stuff like that. Like, you don't ever want to have like a serial killer movie where the serial killer has only killed the people you've seen killed in the movie. You want them to have a bit of a body count before you even start the thing. And for all intents and purposes, this is basically a serial killer film. You know, the dude's just using occult means to dispatch the victims for the purpose of causing this voodoo apocalypse or whatever. Yeah. I do like when he's yelling at the cop and the cop is yelling at him. There's lots of random yelling scenes in this movie. Like when he yells about the caffeine at the beginning and shit. Like, people just be getting randomly loud in Waxwork, or that guy smacking his hands together really fucking aggressively, or it's pounding the table in the vampire scene. Like, and maybe it's because I watched it with like headphones on, but it startled me every time that it happened in the film.
Hey guys, I am gonna have to bounce. My kids are being very children-like, so I apologize.
Just throw your favorite scene out there, man.
My favorite scene. I like the whip scene. Like, I thought it was pretty hot. I'm not gonna lie, it was totally random in the whole film. Like, but it was like like, wow, this film just went from like, I'd say up to that point about PG, for 80s, straight up to one nip loose or nip slip from an NC-17.
Yeah, it gets
It was
explicit real
treading.
quick.
Yeah, it was treading it. And then, like, basically her saying the only thing she didn't say, I guess in our terms, is "hit me, daddy, one more time, daddy." I was just waiting to hear "daddy" come out. Like that was
Yeah,
the
I don't
only
think people
that.
were saying that back then, thankfully.
No, no. So, as a grown man, my the teenage horn dog in me came out during that. That was like, wow, this shit's kind of relevant to these days. Like, hell yeah.
Well, there you go, dude. That's certainly information that we now know.
No. Oh, wait,
It's good to
it was
know
hot.
you're into that.
Well, I mean, I did. I like pain. Like.
There you go.
So.
All right, man. Well, you have a
yeah,
good night.
yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed, what you were able to participate in on here. Was
Yes,
happy to have you, man.
It's been a pleasure, and bye everyone. Keep rocking on, and I'll holler at y'all later.
All right, buddy. You have a good night.
You too.
So where are we at here? There's a random cop that comes in after the first cop, and that first cop totally does look like the South Park guy, and the second cop looks just like Huey Lewis. So every time I watch this movie, I just hear a random Huey Lewis song during that whole sequence where that guy shows up. Um, and unfortunately, the power of love did not save him in this scenario. But basically after the cop does his whole thing, he actually walks into a mummy sequence, which I feel is the weakest sequence of the film. Nothing really happens. There isn't any cool gore. We don't care about the cop as a character because he's a random cop that shows up 2/3 of the way through the movie. So it's just sort of anticlimactic. Ooh, he gets stuck in a sarcophagus with a random lady. Well, at least they can fill their time up in there somehow before they inevitably suffocate. It's better than being stuck in there alone, you know. Or you could probably eat that chick and use her bones to pry open the sarcophagus at some point. I mean, you just got to get creative. I think it's just a gigantic waste of time, and it's about the only time in Waxwork where they actually legitimately waste time, I think. Because the rest of the movie's paced pretty well, like so so quick, one scene right into the next, and it's all satisfying stuff. And then you kind of get to that cop sequence, and it's like, whatever, But true to the anthology format, usually there's one of the sequences that's kind of a dud, I don't know. Do you guys like the mummy sequence, or is it just sort of filler for you?
I mean, they really weren't all that badly trapped because it's not like the mummy sealed them in the tomb. They just dropped it on. There's two of them. Between the two, there were enough people that they were able to open the lid with two people. So between two of them together, they probably could have used the combined muscle power to slide that off or get enough room.
You make a good point. Yeah. Cannibalism might not be required. I don't know why I jumped right to that.
They did have that
I didn't think about them just opening it.
Yeah, they had that dangerous, poisonous boa constrictor in there, so maybe that was how they got done in.
What about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts on the mummy sequence?
Yeah, same as you guys. Probably the weakest one in the movie. I like the effects on the mummy. I like mummies. I wish we had more mummy movies. And not this Imhotep, I'm a mummy for the first 15 minutes and I'm going to be, some dummy thick dude for the rest. I just want a mummy. I just want a shambling corpse that can, teleport itself and just pop up behind you and just, eat your face.
Yeah, mummies are always particularly gross to me because when you think about fighting one, at some point you're going to accidentally breathe in some corpse dust,
Exactly.
And I just have a problem with pollen and dander in general. So I feel like if I breathed in that corpse dust off that mummy, I'd be done for. I'd be one of the early casualties in the film, you know.
Monster
Like I
triggers an
stab
asthma
him with
attack.
something and that cloud comes in my face and then he's able to just get me. I
But yeah,
don't know,
definitely the
you
weakest one.
don't really see, like in the other Waxwork sequences, I guess with the vampire one and the final guy being the exception, but you get to actually see the monsters get vanquished or whatever. And in the mummy one, we don't get any cool like mummy destruction. They could have at least like unraveled it monster party style or something, and then a secondary mummy traps them in the tomb because there was two mummies right there. But I guess only one of them was animated.
Well, we don't even get the there. That's because he doesn't have another sarcophagus to push somebody into. So
That's true. He did just kind of walk out of an adjacent hallway, I think.
Actually, no,
like, where'd that guy come from?
See, another movie I was thinking of about this, and maybe this is another reason why I keep thinking Full Moon, because this really is like a Full Moon production. I was thinking of the movie The Creeps, 1997. I could see that, like, where, because he said it's a bit after the time we were supposed to be at. It's like, and then have all of them come back as just the little people versions of the monsters, like in The Creeps. I don't know, but that just that movie still to this day makes me laugh that you botched it. We're only half done.
Late 90s Full Moon is a bit of a blind spot for me.
We'll get you up to speed eventually. There's a lot of turds, but there's some good stuff in there. Well, I don't know. Good's a relative term, but
entertaining.
Yeah, being good relative to fucking ragdoll isn't necessarily a compliment. But there's some tolerable stuff from that late 90s, early 2000s Full Moon catalog. So I guess really we're kind of to the point where let's talk about Mark and his Night of the Living Dead sequence in black and white, because some old schlocky films look like that, and I don't know if I would consider Night of the Living Dead schlock by our standards as horror fans, but by your average person nowadays, were they to watch it, with Walking Dead probably being the zombie stuff they've seen, it would feel pretty cheap and low budget. So it fits in spirit, but I think that's probably maybe my second favorite sequence next to the vampire one of the movie, even though it's so brief, because they just nail the look of it so well, and the zombies look so cool and juicy. I like a good moist zombie, and they're all pretty humid looking in that sequence, Not a lot of corpse dust to breathe in around those guys, but you got to worry about random goose spatter. Any thoughts on the Night of the Living Dead sequence?
It's a solid.
We'll start with you, Ryan. Go for it, Brandon.
It's a solid sequence. I mean, it is interesting that that's how they figure out voice zombie. I do think that it's interesting that it was him hitting the wall that got him to realize, oh, wait, this isn't real. If it's not real, they can't hurt me. Little bit of a leap of logic, but otherwise, I thought the zombie sequence itself, especially with the whole hand, keep grabbing him on the arm and stuff like that, that I like. The hand to impale the hand in order to...
Yeah, we did have a little cameo of Thing from the Addams Family in this, and he escapes at the end. So,
of the living dead.
Maybe he just went home. I like to think Thing, this also, in addition to happening in the same universe as Society, it's also happening in the same universe as the Addams Family, which does make some sense too. Like, they would probably be those people that were like, oh man, those shunters are like even weirder than we are, so that's why we don't associate with them,
We draw the line at shunting.
They did hit some financial straits in one of those movies too. So maybe during that, like, Thing was out just working a part-time job at this waxwork, and it got out of hand, and so he bails at the end and goes back to his family life. I don't know, anything else on it? I mean, it is pretty brief. I just like it a lot because I'm a huge fan of Night of the Living Dead and black and white horror, and I like that they actually switch it to black and white for the moist zombies. You know,
There's definitely mold growing somewhere.
Yeah,
The
dude.
zombies are a testament to this too. Like I have problems with the pacing of this movie and everything like that, but like the money, you said this was what, $4 million?
Yeah,
The
or
money is on
3.5 according to Wikipedia. So
the money's on the screen. Like these creature effects, as little janky as the werewolf looks, like these are solid creature effects. The gore in the vampire scene, like that rotten leg, and these zombies all look great. Not to mention the other characters in the finale, like you get the snake woman and stuff that are in it for all of 10 seconds, and they still look fantastic.
Yeah, the alien, all of that shit. I mean, that weird like Frankenstein dude that was carrying the lady or whatever. Like all of it looks sick, you know. So they definitely, it was money well spent. It's not one of those movies where you see the budget and you're like, how? You know, you can fully see how they spent $3.5 million making Waxwork and then casting the people that they cast in it for the time. The money was put in the right places. It just unfortunately didn't result in a box office return, which happens. I would like to think with home video sales and rentals and things like that in the years since, Waxwork has probably made back its budget at this point, but it obviously didn't go to the people that, you know, it went to various other folks. But I think, you know, in the years since, the movie's probably grossed that much because fuck, these Vestron DVDs or Blu-rays alone have sold probably that much in the time they've been around. I mean, there's a lot of people that collect these, casual horror fans and hardcore alike, because they sell them at Walmart, you know.
The movie got a
made that
sequel,
budget
so it
back
must have
now.
done. Yeah, the movie got a sequel, so it had to have been doing good on the home video market.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I can honestly say that as much as I love Waxwork, I don't know if it's a movie that I would ever think like, man, I wish I'd seen this in the theater. It's more like a perfect rental film, you know. Like I said, you can pop it on, just watch it while you bullshit with your friends, and it's going to be just as enjoyable as if you were sitting there like fully paying attention to it. So I guess all that's left is for us to share our thoughts on the finale sequence and our favorite character, favorite scenes, you know, close this son of a bitch out. Before we do that though, I'm gonna let you guys plug your stuff while I hit the restroom, and then we'll finish this up. So just tell the people, you know, where you're from, what you do, what you got coming up, what you got out there, kind of thing. We'll start with you, Ryan. Go for
it. Okay. Yeah, I'm Ryan. I am 1/3 of the Hormonal Werewolves. We have a YouTube show where we look at movies, new and old, good and bad, everything in between. We have a good time over there. We have a lot of fun doing it. And yeah, check that out. Hormonal Werewolves on YouTube. I also am part of the Scream Until You Like It podcast network, where I do the Amityville retrospective, where we are going through the entire Amityville catalog movie by movie and reviewing them. We are currently up to, at this point, we're hovering around that Amityville Vanishing Point, Amityville Toy Box phase. We're right, like we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the franchise. We left anything resembling the original timeline long ago.
I was gonna say once it gets past a certain point, it just. I really want to say that it was Amityville Death House that really truly marked, because that was Polonia's intro.
Yeah,
that's when it really marked it.
As of this point, the last episode that was released was Death House. We just put out a review for that one, and we actually wound up enjoying it a fair bit more than the last couple before that.
As far as my stuff, I mean, I'm Septum Sen, a Septum Sen versus the World. We're a small physical media channel. We like to do physical media reviews, pick up videos, a little bit of everything. Our big thing that we're working on now is we've got 2 projects in the kiln, one of which is the Versus Awards, which is our annual award show. We are putting that together all throughout the month, and it's going to show up on the 30th of this month. Already have the winners on board. We also have a series called, we call it Tabletop Horror, in a way, because it's where we do a sort of almost a similar retrospective, but of movies in the series that are based on like tabletop and LARPing RPGs. So the first season is already done, and that'll debut in October. Just trying to get a cover shot, which I think we're going to do once we've got the green screen stuff taken care of. And then finally, if you want to support what we do, I have directed and published. I'm actually in 2 Amityville films. So is Mo. He's in so, I mean, I'm in Amityville Apocalypse. I actually have 2 short films in that. And I am also the director of Amityville Webcam, which I found out now has enough votes on IMDb to have an official IMDb rating, which is kind of cool. And you can get that on SRS. So if y'all go all the way with Amityville, you might end up there. But not sure it's the place.
Yeah, if you want to see me drunk on a Blu-ray cover,
but yeah,
I'm faded as fuck on that thing, dude. Yeah, we wish you were here too, Abby. This was a fun time. Maybe not my smoothest discussion I've ever ran, and it lacked all of our supplemental clips, but I had a hell of a lot of fun. I'm happy to be back doing this. It's I've missed it a lot, and I don't plan on going anywhere ever again. We're getting back to the grind, baby. So, you got anything else to plug, Brandon?
Nah, not at the moment. But the Versus Awards, definitely, we're trying to get it off the ground. It's a lot of work, so if I can't get, I've said I'm kind of done with it, but I've told people, what was it, that if we get to 200 likes on it, that I'll say heck with it and try it another year. If not, we're gonna rework it so that it's not as painstaking, because you got to go through, you got to get all of the presenters. And I got a lot of good ones. I got Joe Weinkoop.
Dude, I would honestly say just stick it out. And you guys that are watching and listening should definitely check out the Versus Awards. Go back and watch the previous one. It's like the Oscars if people that actually gave a shit about movies were picking the winners, We've had several times where low budget indie horror films have been showcased heavily on the thing, and those guys have been able to come and give like acceptance speeches for their awards and everything like that. And you guys have inspired me in the past. I still want to figure out a way to do a schlock-centric version of what you guys are doing with the Versus Awards. Maybe call it the Weed Whacker Awards, because Fangoria has the Chainsaw Awards, right? So it'd be like a lower budget version of that, so the Weed Whacker makes sense. Trophy would be like Ash from Evil Dead holding up a Weed Whacker. I think that's fucking pretty cool.
We're making
but yeah, the Versus Awards are kick-ass. So check it out, guys.
So it'll be entertaining throughout the whole of it. It's we've already got some fun stuff. I have an old sea captain's outfit that I'm using for one of the characters that we're playing. It's gonna be a very entertaining and wild ride.
Yeah, I hope you guys get those likes so that you don't stop doing it, man, because it really is a cool thing that you're doing over there. I'm Mosley. What I do is this. You guys know that, so nothing to plug. Just more of this crap. We are going to be back here next weekend, Saturday, 12, I guess, p.m. Pacific Standard Time for our discussion of The Dead Next Door, going back to those low-budget roots, baby. But for now, we got to talk about the finale of Waxwork. And it's pretty insane. It's like what you kind of wish those Frankenstein, like, pitchfork, mob scenes would be like. Because there's just sword fights happening and dudes in bad wigs and creatures all over the place and a lot of people getting stabbed and just falling down. And And then right when you think it can't get any more awesome, you get like a sword fight with Billy from Gremlins and that dude playing the Marquis de Sade. And I mean, it gets wild. You got people sacrificing themselves and catching on fire. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in it. We're not going to talk about it scene by scene because it's just pure chaos. But I guess, what do you guys think of the finale? And do you think it's a satisfying conclusion to the film? We'll start with you, Brandon.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I even like how the guy in the wheelchair has his wheelchair like tanked out. I think that is amusing as all get out. I thought it was amusing. I mean, to me, any film that's got an entertainment value and somewhat likable characters is a good enough film for me. And this one definitely, that final fight scene was great. I liked how they kind of, though it was kind of disjointed, the ending of the main baddie when he kind of came up from the wax, but he didn't come, but he went right back down. I thought it was a little bit disjointed, but otherwise it was very good. I enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah, what about you, Ryan?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, the finale is the highlight of the movie. You've got, I really feel that the people that created, what the frick is that friggin' movie with Thor? The horror movie Cabin in the Woods?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's got Chris Hemsworth in it. I feel they must have seen this because the finale to that movie is basically what we get here. We get every monster coming to life. It's just absolute chaos. We got, like you mentioned, the dude in the fucking armored wheelchair. The butler goes out unceremoniously. It's just chaos. It's absolute chaos. I was not expecting it the first time I watched the movie that it was going to go out on this bonkers of an ending. And every time it's like you're a kid again, just smashing your action figures together. Like it's just so much going on. None of it makes sense. And then it just ends. It's smart enough to just end there. It doesn't carry, we don't get like a Lord of the Rings style 3 different endings afterwards. It's just chaos is over. We get Thing coming up out of the dirt and boom, cut to credits.
Yeah, Waxwork really knows how to get in there, get the fucking job done, and then fuck off. Like, there's not a lot of drawn out elaboration at the end of this thing. It just is like, it was a fun ride, wasn't it? All right, see you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way. I agree with both you guys. I think the movie, the finale is a high point in it. It definitely just gets insane. I'm a big fan of movies that end on an insane note like that. Like you've been building up to it with all this weirdness and craziness the whole time, and then the shit just goes off the rails. Probably my favorite thing about the movie, though, is the song that plays over the closing credits, where it's my party and I'll cry if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just fits the whole thing so perfectly, man. And I very much enjoyed drinking a couple of beers during that while it was ending there. So I guess we'll jump into our favorite scenes. There's a lot of good scenes in this movie. Most notably, there is a couple of pretty chunky gore scenes, which kind of actually go the same way. So it makes me wonder if they didn't reuse appliances for them or whatever. Because you got the guy getting split in half by the werewolf, and then you got the vampire guy where she touches his head with the crucifix, and his body also splits in half. So it makes me wonder if they didn't just have that one thing built, and then they reused it for those scenes. But either way, they filled it with hamburger meat and a bunch of goo, and that's all you need, really. I can't really think of any other gore, though, other than in the vampire sequence, and that's mostly splatter. And it is glorious, to be sure. Lots of cool creature effects and costumes in this. So in terms of effects and things like that, I mean, I feel like we've adequately praised most of that. Is there anything that I'm leaving out that you guys can think of before we jump into the favorite character, favorite scenes?
Nope. Because, my favorite scene is a gore scene, so...
I think we've pretty much touched on all that stuff. So yeah, we'll start with you, Ryan. What's your favorite character, favorite scene?
Okay. Actually, favorite character and favorite scene are the same as a person in the scene. I absolutely love the old dude in the armored wheelchair. He's fucking hilarious. He's badass, and the way he goes out, just getting unceremoniously murdered by a fucking werewolf by having his head ripped off at the top of the stairs.
He needed to pair up with the woman from Poltergeist. I don't know why. I feel like I could see them together.
Oh, hell yeah.
Just
Zelda.
driving her out of the
Heck
18th
yeah.
man.
The house is clear, and then he just backpacks her out on the wheelchair. I'm about that, dude. That needs to be in some alternate universe. I like to think that happened. That'd be pretty cool. My favorite scene in the movie is honestly probably that opening sequence where they're talking about the caffeine. Like if I had to pick, one favorite scene as far as like a moment that I think defines the oddity that is Waxwork, I think it's that kind of stuff, much in the same way like the lady spitting up the hairball in Society is a good moment where you can be like, if you want the vibe of this movie distilled into a scene, it's that one, not the shunting, not anything else, the hairball. I think that gives you a good middle ground to go from for the rest of the insanity there. And I think the opening in this one does it. I love the Scooby-Doo vibes. I love, all of the sequences outside of the mummy one. My favorite character in the movie, though, is definitely the butler. There's something about what's it, Jensen or Jenkins or whatever his name is? Mark's butler.
Jenkins, yeah.
Like, I love that he has his back with the coffee and the cigarettes at the beginning of the movie, and then he has his back again at the end, showing up ready to go to war and get killed. It's a shame that he died. I think he's him and the old guy in the wheelchair are probably the two casualties in the movie that it's a shame they couldn't have survived, so they could have somehow been a part of the sequel. What about you, Brandon? Favorite character, favorite scenes?
I do like the Wax Man himself. David Warner always gives a fun performance, and that whole thing where he's dressed up like Willy Wonka, that right there throws it for me. But as far as favorite scene, which of course he's in, which is the scene where the jock gets killed. Even though they didn't show it, I love the whole thing, like where the guy's like, yeah, and it's like they made a movie of it, and he's like. And then after he's dead, he just walks off like movie of the, and just scoffing at the fact they made multiple movies.
Yeah, they'll make a movie of anything these days.
So yeah, I don't know why, but I just thought that was great. I thought it was hilarious there. It's like you didn't even need to show him get killed at that point because it was great banter.
Yeah, you make a good point because I kind of had it in my notes, like griping about the fact that they didn't show the kill. But I think now that you've explained that, I agree with you. What were you saying?
Oh, that was it. I was just taking in breath.
Well, I think Abby's still in the comments too. So if you want to share your favorite character and favorite scene in the movie real quick, Abby, we wouldn't complain about that. So go for it, girl. I guess I kind of do have other stuff to plug in the sense that I have my fishing page. So if any of you guys are like into angling of any sorts, go over and like Untitled Fishing Show. That's the name of the page and the show. I haven't put anything out in the last couple of weeks because the phone that I used to film it got trashed when I capsized my kayak. But I've got a couple of GoPros that I'm going to be snagging up not next week, but the week after. And I'll be back to posting videos. We got the fall fishing season coming up. A lot of those big bass are going to turn back on again and be a little bit more predictable to catch on account of the lower temperatures not frying their fucking eyeballs when they try to come up into the shallows. So we got that going on. I got the kayak. I got a 12-foot John boat that I'm going to be out on here soon. And we'll be catching all kinds of cool stuff over there and possibly reviewing some beers. I think that's something I'm going to start including like an on-the-water review of various regional brewery stuff. So that's something you can look forward to there. Abby says her favorite character is Todd because he's the comic relief. What's his name, Todd? Or was it Tony? I don't even know. At one point, I thought his name was
it was
Jack.
Toby.
Yeah.
There you go. Maybe he doesn't even have a name. And her favorite scene is the werewolf sequence, which is fair, you know. Includes favorite character, and it is pretty fucking rad. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. I think at the end of the day, if you want a fun, I've been calling them like a funhouse attraction movie, you know. There's lots of those movies. I would say Feast is kind of one of those too, where it's like, you know, it's also like a siege flick if you want to think about it like that. But I think when I think funhouse attraction flicks, I think of like a movie you just look at and can enjoy. You could watch it on mute and it's still going to be fun. And you know, Waxwork definitely fits into that category. We're going to be back with the sequel at some point next week. We're going to be doing the, you know, Dead Next Door, but probably the week after we're going to cover the Waxwork sequel. So if you guys are interested in seeing us talk about that, tune back in. Okay, his name was Tony. I'm not crazy. Right on. Be sure to subscribe to these guys' stuff. In the future, we'll be putting those links back in the description, so it'll be a little easier for you, but they're not hard to find on YouTube. Cheers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys back here next time.